having to operate the city within. The cuts that are going to be laid out are dramatic, they're severe, they're unpleasant, and cuts that none of us want to see take place in our city. However, finances as they are require us to make such cuts. We've looked at many other items. Many cuts have been made throughout this year in early parts discussions and earlier budget discussions and adjustments along the way. The cuts that are being presented are having made all of those cuts, and to address the shortfall that we're experiencing now, they also are setting the stage and leading into the path that we will have to pursue to meet next year's budget projected declines. So, this is the cuts that are going to be outlined by Mr. Eichenlaub will be immediately to get us through this year, but also set the stage for even more, more severe cuts next year. As severe as these cuts are, they pale in comparison to what is scheduled for next year. The only possible exception to the cuts for next year are weighing the balance with the income tax measure that is scheduled for the November ballot. Should it pass, most of these cuts will not be necessary.
I have to send another letter dropping the revenue by $450,000 in the general fund. What that means is that letter will not be accepted unless the appropriation equals the certificate of estimated resources. So we would have to lower our appropriation in the general fund by $450,000 to equal the amount that I want to lower the certificate by. On the expenditure side, there's one budget in the general fund that needs a big shot in the arm, and that's the fire department. I've been through their budget. We have 9 pays to go, and based on that, I feel that we're going to need $300,000 to add to the fire department's budget. I'm talking over with the chief, and he feels that we could move approximately $76,000 up from operating and capital, but that still leaves the $224,000 that we will need to give to the fire department if they want to get through the end of the year. Some of that has been overtime. They were appropriated $200,000 for overtime. They've had some big fires like the college fire and the house fire. And right now they've spent $210,000 on overtime with still 9 pays to go.
We really have 2 issues to deal with: the $450,000 worth of appropriation reduction and about $225,000 reduction that we're going to need in the fire budget or additional funds. We don't have additional funds. So the intention is for us to move forward with doing 2 things with the fire budget. It's going to require us to lay off 8 firefighters and a mechanic, which shall create a savings of about $125,000 over the last 6.5 days. It takes a few weeks to go through the process of the layoff notice and to execute those layoffs. That'll leave a shortfall of about $100,000. This council passed an ordinance earlier in the year authorizing and directing the auditor to reimburse the general fund up to $125,000 for the testing of hydrants. We would like to have him do that to address the other $100,000 that is necessary at the fire department. That takes us to the $450,000 of appropriation reductions. At this point, we are going to go to the police department with a reduction of 16 people. Our intention is to close the jail, and that would create a savings of $250,000 in the balance of 2009, which will include the laying off of 12 correctional officers and 3 supervisors, and also a computer technician that works in the police department. Leaves us a $200,000 shortfall that we still have to cover in the appropriation reduction. What we're going to do is move the balance of the maintenance staff that is working in the Parks Department into the Special Parks Fund that has, I believe, enough money to get through the end of the year, but we'll burn up that fund, allowing us to reduce the Parks and Rec General Fund appropriation to $200,000 that we need to complete the $450,000 that the mayor has, or that the auditor has brought forward here. And hopefully that action will prevent any further layoff. Other item that is to address the shortfall that we're having in the building department, Assistant Building Official Jerry Klein has resigned his position as Assistant Building Official effective the beginning of October, and that will help us correct a shortfall in that department. That should take care of the necessary actions.
Cuts are extremely painful, as was described, and they're worse than were described. And as bad, again, as these cuts are, if we're talking about, when you add up these cuts, closing the jail, reductions in fire, and in other places with parks, etc., when you extrapolate that over, those cuts over into next year, relative to this year, that equates to less than $2 million of cuts. So with all the cuts we're talking about, there's still in the neighborhood of $2.5 million in cuts to be made next year on top of all of this. $2.5 million additional cuts on top of this. So it's painful, it's challenging, it's difficult, and perhaps devastating as this may be, it's pales in comparison to what is coming our way next year. Listening to the top national economists, the most optimistic ones, will say that the economy may have hit bottom and we're starting the road to recovery as a nation. But those same economists, the optimists among them, still say that unemployment is expected to continue to increase over the next 18 months into 2011. They expect while the economy may be turning, unemployment will continue to rise for the next 18 months. And that's where our revenue largely comes from, the income tax revenue. Corporate profits, corporate earnings are minimal right now. Our main earnings are the income tax from payroll. And the prospects are not good. The one opportunity to forestall the continuation of these cuts and considerably more cuts on top of them, the only opportunities to do this are income tax measures on the November ballot. And it's incumbent upon all of us in this room to express to everyone's friends and relatives, neighbors, co-workers, the importance of this issue. The consequences of its failure are going to be unwitnessed in any of our